Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the special open meeting of the Vesuvius Town Council to order. This meeting is held in the council chambers on Wednesday, August the 4th, 2010. There's basically one item of business to be dealt with. Were you going to add, change the agenda to the UBCM discussion? Or is that just going to be on a casual basis? Okay,
okay with you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so there is no additions to the agenda, and basically we have, we're dealing with 3 different bylaws. We are really looking at one subject matter in this. I'd like to thank some of the town folks that have come out to this meeting. I think this is the biggest single-handed issue that we've had in front of us since I've certainly been associated with the Vesuvius Town Council. We are dealing with a density bonus situation, which we did have experience with earlier with the Indigo property. But added to that now we have a phased development agreement in which this is going to be phased in. We are looking at, there's height association with this on the 3 buildings that are being built. As again, it's a phased development. What we do at the end of this process is standing for 10 years. So it's of extreme importance here. The depth that the planning department has gone into is also very large. There's just a ton of information here to be digested. And this is heading for all your processes. This is heading for what happens today, could be first reading or some first readings, and then we'll be heading into that public information process, that public hearing process, second, third readings. And I think with how we've been handling this lately, I think people are getting fairly well aware of how it works. I would be willing to talk to the press again just to make sure that they understand the process of where we're going with this today. Some of these items some or all are heading for first reading. So having said all that, I'm prepared to turn this over to our Director of Planning, Mr. Cunningham.
Excuse me for a moment.
Yes.
Would it be helpful if we use the microphone for your presentation?
Yeah, we're webcasting this. Is it on? Is it on? Let's get a red light there. You're going to have to be closer. There,
within about 6 inches of it, I believe. Okay.
Mike.
Okay. Hear me now? Okay. So Desert Lagoon Holdings, the developer, has applied for a fairly large multi-phase development, which would include a medical commercial building and 237 multiple family dwellings. Under a phase development agreement, the property will be developed in 4 phases, starting, first of all, next year, probably with the medical commercial building, and then proceeding to the subsequent 3 phases of residential buildings, the first of which will be an 8-story building, the next will be a 6-story, and the third, last phase of the residential development will be a 10-story building. All buildings will be of concrete construction and located on their own lots. In addition, the subdivision plan will make allowance for a road right-of-way going through the property from existing vedette through to the highway. Site plan is attached directly to this report for council's convenience. During the lengthy gestation period of this particular project, the developer 208 did hold 2 public information. Developers submitted a total of 6 development applications together with $14,000 in fees. I've identified the process that hopefully council will go through, and also I've attached some dates to that, and hopefully we'll meet those dates, both to ensure that the process proceeds expeditiously, but also to save extensive costs. So after the presentation here, I'm hoping that council will give first readings to the OCP and zoning amendment bylaws and the PDA authorization bylaw. Then following that, those 3 documents would proceed concurrently to a public information meeting and then onto a public hearing. Following the public hearing, staff is requesting that council give 2nd and 3rd readings of the amendment bylaws and 2nd, 3rd, and final to the PDA authorization bylaw. And the reason for that is that the document, which is a legal documentation which is attached here with the covenants and so forth, has to be registered and titled before council considers final rezoning. If they don't approve the final rezoning, then that legal documentation is removed from the property title at the developer's cost. Any questions on section 1?
Yes, I have a couple.
Okay.
What was the advantage of them doing the subdivided into creating the 4 lots? It's one title now, I believe.
Well, it would allow them to sell them off separately, though they say that that's not their intent. But I would think that there's probably financial implications in terms of raising money and of course lessening liability that you would have on a lot by lot basis.
Secondly, so if we were looking at the OCP and the zoning amendment and the PDA authorization bylaws, when would this be heading into the development permit, and when does because we're going into a comprehensive development, so when would we actually be okaying the use?
Okay, in the normal course of events, the development permit for the commercial residential building will be dealt with at the same time as the zoning approval. The other buildings will be covered separately by their own DEPs at the time that development proceeds. So council would have to consider a DP separately for each of the residential buildings prior to the building permit. So that's in the future when these events occur.
So if we were looking at the 6, 8, and 10-story buildings, that would not be nothing to do with what we're doing today whatsoever, because what we're doing today is a 10-year commitment, and on that 10-year commitment, this is new legislation under the community charter, and this can't be taken back. When we go into a phased development, this cannot be pulled back by future councils. This is a 10-year commitment from this council into the future. Am I right?
It's actually under the local government
okay,
Act.
Under the local government act.
And
sorry.
what it does, and it's the only provision in the act which does this, it fetters the discretion of future councils for a period of 10 years. Okay, so it locks in the zoning, but I will get to that later in the report.
Okay, so now where does the height issue come into here? where does the 6, 8, and 10 stories come in?
Okay, well, that is covered under the zoning, and Shannon will be talking about that later. So we'll get to that under the zoning bylaw, if we could delay it to then.
Still relating to item number 1, and I hope this is also picked up with council. I'd like some further support to this, but I'm looking at the dates that are here. I find those I don't think that they can be met, and I don't think that they should be met. I see large gaps there on information for the public. To have this, we have the meeting today. To have the public information meeting on the 10th, there's not even a newspaper out before in that period of time. To meet.
Sorry, there's one already across at the newspaper, and it's ready to roll if council does not.
I understand that would be the ad.
It'll be canceled.
Yes, that would be the ad that would be in the paper. But I'm looking for, a lot of people don't read the public hearing little ads on, in the back pages. They usually pick up the story, and they usually garner their first piece of information from a newspaper article that's written, be it High Rise on Peanut Pond or whatever that article is going to be. But I certainly don't see an opportunity here to adequately inform the public. So I guess I have quite an issue with that. And of course, then that compounds it into public information, public hearing, all in this frame on the biggest development that I've seen in the history of Osoyoos, with the most implications. It's not going to be bigger than Watermark, but it has more overreaching implications. And I just don't see this. This council has been accused of not doing due process and not doing due diligence and not doing due information process in the past. So I just see this adding to that. I think we need a different time frame there. This certainly doesn't reflect what I see the needs of the community are. Council, please. Councillor Chadsey.
Well, I think the reasons are that from the developer's point of view, that this project has been, application has been going on for some time, and it's costing them a lot of money per month the longer that we delay this. And I would assume that there could be some financing implications with that could adversely affect the developer. If you've got other investments that are lined up, they're only going to wait around so long. So as from the staff point of view, it doesn't make any difference. The longer the time we usually have to do something, the easier it is on us. As far as the public is concerned, that's a matter of different feelings that may be around the room in terms of whether it's adequate or not adequate. But at the end of the day, that's council's determination, not staff's. That's when it first started.
And you've worked constantly with the developer over that period of time?
Yeah, we worked the most intensively over the last 6 months. The first development proposal was for low-rise towers, and then they subsequently changed that to have medium-rise towers incorporating the medical commercial building. So the actual development concept has changed over time, and then it's in the last 6 months that it was associated with a PDA concept. And you may remember that I took first report respecting the PDA to council late at the end of last calendar year.
Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With all due respect, I think over the last several months that there's been a lesson learned by myself and some of the things that we've had to deal with, the rezoning of the lakefront properties, our marina development. And I think that message has to be sent out. So I'm you know, I don't know what process that you would like to follow to see this change, but August 10th is way too premature for a public information session, in my opinion. We need to be aware that this has a profound effect on a lot of residents in our community. As Mayor Wells alluded to, this is a seriously huge development for our community, and we want to make sure that we do the right thing. And letting the public know that we're having a public information session is absolutely mandatory, and I don't see that happening in a week. Up to this point, I'm you know, things are kind of satisfactory, but those dates have to be changed, in my opinion. They're just way too premature.
Well, we'll take council's advisement on that. Totally your decision.
Yeah, and if, in fact, that newspaper ad for the 10th, that's even before the paper comes out. The paper is a Wednesday publication. I believe that would be Tuesday the 10th. So we can't even, that doesn't even make it.
Well, it makes it in time for one advert for the public information meeting, and for two.
I beg to differ, but
Well,
if Tuesday is the 10th, that's not a publication day for the newspaper. The newspaper is published on Wednesday. It would appear to be.
I just want to add that legally, you know, the process that we've outlined here is correct in terms of giving the requisite number of advertisements in the paper. Whether you agree with that as a number is a totally different issue. Okay, if you want more time to be given, then more time will be given.
Yeah, and I understand the implication this has on the developer. This has been on the books way before 2008, and you know, there's been a lot of changes and a lot of information. The planning department's had a really good kick at it, and I think it's only fair that the public process have its fair kick at it. And that's my statement. Thank you, Councillor Ryan.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would concur in your feeling that this is too aggressive. I think there are a number of considerations. You know, staff have been at this for a long time, and this is a very comprehensive and thorough and detailed report. But it's the first time council has seen it, other than having preliminary concerns about negotiating positions and various ways in which we might structure the phased agreement. So I think that you know, I have some concerns about the phased development agreement as well, which we haven't come to yet. But I think that having it in the summer is another thing. You know, when August people are away, they're having visitors, they're not really in sort of a serious mode for examining documents like this, and so I think we have to take that into account. Also, as I've said in the past, I always feel it's even though it is legitimate and it is legal to make decisions for second and third reading immediately following a public hearing, I always feel that it's quite unseemly to sit there for an hour or two and listen to people and then make your decision 5 minutes later. So I don't like the idea of suggesting that we make that decision following a public hearing. So I think we need to look at this schedule again. I think we need to spread it out, to push it back, and you know, it's unfortunate. I know you feel that you've been in touch with the developer and you've worked on this you know, for many months, and I appreciate that. But you know, for us, we got it last week, and now we're being asked to make a number of major decisions, and I think that we're feeling that the timing on these hearings and information meetings and other meetings in which we're deliberating on them is just a little too compressed.
Thank you. Councillor Cromwell, any discussion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. being the last one to speak here on this topic. I tend to agree with my partners here and the fellow councilors. I don't have a problem with the idea of the amendments being read and that part moving ahead. But I think it's really important that the public be informed about what this is and what it entails, and have their opportunity to pass that information to us. So I think there needs to be some more time to make them aware of meetings and opportunities to come forward, and also to learn about what this project is all about. After that, I don't have a problem with the process. After that, I've been aware of this project for a long time, and it's nice to see it come to fruition. So I think there must be something there for the developer that's some pressure that's getting it done, because it has been around for quite a while. So I can sympathize with some of what he has to say as well. But it's really important to have the public informed. So I would like to see that extended so that at least there's a few more weeks in there to get the information out, get the ads out, and make sure everybody has the opportunity to come and participate.
Thank you. And I guess one of the other issues that wasn't touched on was just the time of the year, being August, summertime, holiday, Okanagan, company, people coming, people going. This would really be poorly received if we were putting this in. Councillor Cronmiller.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to disagree with you on that one.
Okay.
I'd like to say that we have to do business all year round. It's a busy place, yes, and we have a summertime. But I think we have to keep moving. We don't want to say, well, okay, it's summer, we shut the door. And that's kind of what we're doing. You know, sure, we're busy, but there's lots of people here, and I think we got to keep going.
Yeah, well, obviously, but I disagree with that. It is summertime. People are busy. They do need good notice on this. So just backing this up a little bit. So in today's newspaper, there's ads in today's newspaper. Is there?
Obviously, judging by the made by all council, council sign will have to be.
Councillor Rhodes, please.
Just a quick question. Public information, will this be hosted by town staff this time, or developer hosted?
By town staff. The developers already hosted 2 sessions of their own, and actually staff would welcome the opportunity to talk directly with some members of the public about whatever concerns or otherwise that they may have. We followed that kind of process before, for instance, with the Southeast Mental Art Plan, and worked out very successfully. But just to conclude from staff's point of view in terms of the concerns, comments that have been raised by council, I would still like you to proceed with the first readings today, but we will provide you as soon as possible with a revised time schedule, which will lengthen the process out so it's not so compressed as the comments were made.
Okay. If I could just interject, given council's direction, maybe we'd like to get some dates. It's from the administrative perspective, we would like to know what you're comfortable with in terms of due notice on the public information meeting, because certainly the timing related to the public information meeting sets up the rest of the schedule. So I've heard debate around the table relative that summertime is not the time to do it. So do you want the public information meeting in September? Do you want it in August? Let us know, and then we can set the schedule from there.
Well, if I can answer that first, I think if we use the month of August for getting the information out, and I'm following with what Councillor Cronmiller said, that business must go on, and we understand that. But if we were looking to get that public information meeting out and the public hearing, and I don't think public hearing has to run at a council meeting. Again, if this is going to be a bigger issue, and we'll soon be able to gauge how big that issue is, but I think if we were rolling this into some of the decision-making processes into September, I think we'd have a comfort level with. And when going back to what Mr. Cunningham had to say about first reading, Really, we probably could and should be looking at first reading today, because that's the triggering process. And that really starts the process moving. It means it's for real. It means that the developer can start making some moves. So the first reading process, and I know it gets people very excited, but the first reading process is the first step. And without that, we're all just sitting here really twiddling our thumbs and not doing anything. It's just general information. So and this will be driven by council, but at the end of this meeting today, I would see us moving into that first reading process to trigger all the issues that are upcoming. Council, Mr. Romanko.
So I'm just looking for a date where, like third week in August, is that sufficient for a public information meeting, or last week in August?
Or even if we can get it out in a couple where we're 4/14, we could get that and the public hearing done at the tail end of August. I think that would be sufficient. Councillor Rhodes?
I was going to suggest probably August 25th, which is the final Wednesday of August, for the public information portion of it.
Okay. What about public hearing then? Councillor Chadsey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have no problem with having a public information meeting on August the 25th. I do have a problem with setting, hopefully not in stone, all the subsequent dates, because a public information meeting is what is really going to guide us for all of the timing in the future. It may be that we will require a second public information meeting to sort through comments and stuff like that. So I think that first and foremost we should have a public information meeting with staff on hand, with the plan that council is being asked to buy into, and then on our September 7th meeting we will have the ability to set a public hearing date or a second information meeting, and move on from there. And I do want to talk a little bit about the public information, if I could.
Okay. Is that now?
Sure, I can do it now.
Okay, yeah. Well, that's sort of the topic. Thank you.
Alain, whenever we do hold the public information meeting, can I request through the mayor and council that the residents along Vedette Drive and the hotel owner be just drop a notice in their mailbox or at their door. It'll only take staff maybe an hour and a half to do this, because it is summer and people are in and out, and I think that they are the most impacted, are the residents who surround this property. So if that could be part of your notice, with council's consent, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, a good idea, and so somewhat equivalent to a buffer requirement, though much larger than that. We will ensure that, in fact, they get the notices, and probably the best way of doing it will be to drop it off personally at their doors.
Yep.
Okay?
Yep. Thank you.
We'll do that.
So, can I just, looking at if we look at that at the 25th for public information, trying to accommodate the developer also, if we looked at September the 7th, could we look at September the 7th for the public hearing? Or do you not want to pin that down? I see the administration side wanting to pin down that public hearing date, and I see sort of council holding it back a bit. Councillor Cronmiller, Mr. Romanko, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I kind of was thinking when I listened to what Councillor Chadsey said, maybe we should just set two public information meeting dates. We could set one on the 25th, one the following week, and then hold the public hearing. The 7th I'm kind of leery of, because it's right after Labor Day and it's a council night anyway, and it could be something that we should set on a separate night. Just because, as we said, give everybody the opportunity to speak. We could set that on a different night that week, after the 7th, the 8th, or the 9th, and then follow through after that.
Yeah, I believe that Councillor Shadji's idea was that on the 7th, we'd receive the information that was coming out of the first public information meeting by staff, and depending on the comments that are forwarded to you, that you can make a decision at that time whether or not to require a second public information meeting or to set a time for a public hearing. So obviously the timelines would differ depending on the decision that you made. If in fact you agreed that the information from the public information meeting was sufficient to proceed to a public hearing, then that date could be set for, let's say, a week after September the 7th.
Other than we need two notices of paper, so that would give us 7. That's the 21st, which would work for us too. That would be a council night on that, so we could do that then. Okay. Councillor Rhodes.
Just a reminder that there are actually council days.
Right.
Yeah. So the 7th would be a possibility for an evening meeting for the public inquiry part.
Oh, the council days, right. Sorry. Okay, so we've got Mr. Romanko, please.
Just as a remark in terms of this is that we're just trying to pin down the dates because the developer has been very adamant with us that they would like to know the schedule. Okay. And so it as Alain referred to, this is costing them dollars. They have to arrange financing. So the schedule is very, very critical to them. So having that direction enables us to communicate appropriately council's will relative to moving this project through the legislative process and the information process. So that being said, the schedule as presented here was one that we've communicated that again is open to council direction. So and they're very aware of that.
Okay, well, I think I think there's comfort here with council on where we are with this. So I'll turn it back over to Mr. Cunningham, please.
Okay.
Sorry for the digression, but I think it was important that we get this one working properly here.
I will now proceed with section 2, and hoping that there will not be such lengthy conversation after each of the section. But that is your right. So now proceeding to the official community plan amendment bylaw, which would be necessary to enable the associated zoning change. Staff assessed the impact of both the official community plan change and zoning change with respect to the goals enunciated in our OCP, and we find that the development as proposed, 237 multi-family residential units and the medical commercial building are very supportive to 4 of our smart growth goals, which are near the introduction of the OCP, and those are respecting mixed land uses, housing diversity, compact community, and growth management. I'm not going to go into the details of that today, but I will also like to mention that the development is very consistent with the growth management goals, which are included in the South Okanagan Regional Growth Strategy, of which we are a signatory, especially the idea of directing as much urban growth as possible to select urban centers and infilling existing service areas, which is particularly the case with the Oasis development. So any questions on that section? Proceeding to the next one, the zoning amendment bylaw and density bonus. Allusion has been made by the mayor that there's a density bonus involved in this particular development. Just like to explain that. The total area of the site is 2.37 hectares, and the developer has the right, which he wishes to continue with, to develop that out at 100 units per hectare, meaning 237 units. However, the inclusion of the medical commercial building will result in the concentration of the residential component on a smaller site, to the effect that there would be an additional 93 units on that particular portion over what would normally be allowed under the R7 zoning. So accordingly, the developer applied for a density bonus in accordance with Section 11 of our Land Use Procedures Bylaw, and council agreed that, in fact, they would regard the medical component of the medical commercial building as a sufficient public benefit in return for a density bonus. But two things to add to that. Council also decided that they still wanted to receive amenity values, i.e. cash, in return for the phase development agreement. And as I will also discuss, there are certain safeguards with respect to if the developer does not build up a significant portion of the medical component of their building. But I'll get to that later. So I'll turn it over to Steve now to talk about the actual attached zoning amendment bylaw.
Mr. Shannon, please.
If approved, bylaw 10. Sure. Okay, if approved, bylaw 1085.77 will rezone the Oasis property from to comprehensive development zone CD8, and that'll allow for the commercial medical building in addition to the residential development, the 6, 8, and 10-story buildings composed of 237 units. The bylaw will also allow the higher residential buildings than the previous zoning in the R7 for the 4-story limit for the buildings, and also a higher commercial building than in our C1 downtown zone. The text of the bylaw describes the permitted uses, the definitions, got a full list of definitions, and it's under the commercial and the residential development components. It describes the maximum density, the minimum required building setbacks, the approximate maximum building heights, and the maximum number of stories, parking regulations, and a list of development conditions. There is a site plan attached to the bylaw that is labeled as CD8 bylaw map number 1, and that bylaw map shows you, up on the screen there, that bylaw shows you the development phases, which eventually will become the subdivision lot lines, building and parkade footprints, building heights, the actual proposed building setback distances, most of which are the same as the required setbacks, required minimum setbacks in the bylaw, except for 2 that exceed the requirements. And yep, and I'll give it back to Alan, and we'll take questions now on that if you like.
Okay, so Councillor Chazzy, please.
I'm just curious on the zoning permitted uses. Was there a particular reason for a licensed establishment in there? Okay.
Yeah, we could.
So all we're talking about right now is the zoning amendment to the comprehensive development and the density bonus issue.
Correct.
Okay, now there was 3 or 4 choices on the density bonus, on the density bonus, on how that was coming with that being forwarded.
Right.
The $2 a square foot and quite a bit of discussion there. And just when I was going back and I was thinking back to Indigo, that was $15 a square foot at Indigo. Is that correct?
No, it was actually 20 in total, but 10 of it was cash. The other 10 was received parkland.
Okay.
Actually, money for developing.
Right. Okay, and I understand, I mean, that was then and this is now. This is the reality of the economic climate being reflected here. But it's still substantial money for that density bonus.
Yeah, that is correct. And at the time that we discussed the development, there was never set in policy by council that maximum monies per square foot would be collected for lakeshore properties, have a higher rate of return, and so we participate more in the revenue sharing. But as we move away from the lakeshore, then that dollar figure would reduce. There was discussion by council specifically around the $10 foot figure, both because the land values less here, but also downtown.
So on the density bonusing, which council was accepting the medical component of the building, and then I see there's guarantees in there that if down the road in the future, that if the medical component level isn't achieved, there's some money, I believe $150,000 if they don't hit a medical use for that building, and then there's a $300,000 kick in if they don't hit the medical use of that building. And I guess my question is that bonded money? Do we have a bond for that money? Is that what we would be looking to collect on that for that guarantee?
Yes, it would be secured.
That would be a surety?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And council follows me on that. I know it's sort of a bit of a Councillor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I followed you on it, and I wasn't sure if we were ready to talk about this yet, but I have a serious concern about my reading of the actual text of the phasing agreement, because there are a number of references to that, and what you said was correct, but then there is another clause, and that is in that agreement on the phasing. It's section 9.3. The very end of that, the very last paragraph of section 9.3, which says for clarity, and then it basically says that if the occupancy permit for the fourth phase is about to be issued, and if they have an occupancy for 60 days to reach that 35%, that counts. Well, 60 days occupancy, I mean, to me that it seems to unravel the whole arrangement.
Perhaps I could explain that. The developer was very concerned about that provision. Might realize they didn't know beforehand that we were going to go after them for a potential total of $300,000, $150,000 which would be payable at phase 3, another $150,000 at phase 4 if in fact they didn't make the 35% target of the building medical use. And the concern that was raised by the developer, and I think it's a very valid one, is that he could have had 35% occupancy in there for quite some time, and then he has a tenant that perhaps a day before, for sake of example, the $150,000 might potentially kick in, said, I'm moving out. And everyone concerned, the lawyers and myself, agreed that in fact there should be some language put in PDA to cover that particular situation. I don't think we're going to be faced with that. But if it might happen, it might happen at phase 3. I don't think it's going to happen at phase 4.
So our lawyers have in fact looked over these agreements, and
I have spent countless emails and hours with our lawyers on this, going through all the documentation line by line by line. Our lawyer has been extremely thorough, we were very lucky to have Mr. Mike Corsini, who is actually a provincial expert on PDAs working on particular.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. No, so I appreciate you know, that what the developer would feel about this. I guess when I read it, I could see that they hadn't achieved that. My scenario was they had not achieved the 35%.
No, they had achieved it,
no,
and then they lost it.
No, well, okay, that's your scenario. My scenario is they hadn't achieved it, and so it's coming up to the deadline to pay that $150,000, and so they. I mean, for $150,000, it would be worth it to get somebody in there to tip the scale at rent-free.
Well, there's also language in there that covers that. In fact, they have to provide the appropriate assurances that, in fact, the tenant is in there legitimately. I think we can.
I didn't see that. I guess I was responding to the 60-day tenancy.
No, it's secured. I mean, if they got some fly-by-night business in there to say, sure, we're picking up tenancy there, but they have to provide adequate proof to us that, in fact, there's a legitimate business concern and that all the legal documentation is put in place for the lease.
And that's in the agreement?
Yes, it is.
Okay, maybe you can point that out to me after.
Okay.
Councillor Chadsey, please.
Thank you. I had also pinpointed that. Was there any consideration given to just altering the wording similar to 35% occupancy in the last 6 months prior to the issuance of Phase 3 or Phase 4? And that would take care of the developer's concerns and also the scenario that Councillor Ryan put forth.
So in other words, extend the 60 days out to 6 months.
Well, just any time providing that 35% of the medical has been used for medical in the 6 months prior to the issuance of Phase 3/Phase 4.
But for what duration of time? The whole 6 months?
Any time in the 6 months.
No, well, what we've got now.
Oh,
is a
I
better
see what you're
safeguard
saying.
than
Yeah,
that. Right.
yeah.
Okay.
But I will, in light of the comments made about when there's proper documentation, I'll go back into that's there, wasn't there, satisfactory. In fact, we have the control over confirming that, in fact, there was.
Okay, well, we didn't really get into the phase development, but we did. So I think we have to sort of bring that phase development discussion in with Mr. Cunningham there. We'll get the full flavor of how these fit.
So, in the discussion on the zoning.
No, Councillor Ryan, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to pick up on the last thing that Mr. Shannon said, and that was that the required setbacks, most are the same except for 2 that exceed the requirements. I wasn't sure where those were. I was trying to follow this, and it looks like there's a fair amount of space to expand the footprint from my reading of the.
Yeah, one of them is the medical commercial building where the parking lot that included on the north side far exceeds what would be a normal setback requirement under our 7 zone, and the other one, I believe, is between south
end of phase 2.
Setback from the new road.
Oh, yes, I see that now. Yeah,
okay.
Thank you. Okay,
right.
Good. So, and then there is provision in the agreement about what is it, a 0.3 of a meter that they've got some variation there that they can go a little higher and so on. So conceivably, these footprints that were shown here, even though they're part of the document, they can expand those a bit. They could they could have a wider footprint in some
No.
cases?
No, the footprints are set. Change that could occur could be with respect to the height of the buildings. That's why on the site plan it says that they're approximate. So they could differ depending on the market. You could have 8 foot, 9 feet, 10 feet, high ceilings, and you might want to put something a bit more exotic on the top of the building, something with higher, perhaps, square footage. But it cannot exceed what would be the accumulative total of 0.3 meters per foot. And so there's no change which is allowed in the actual footprint of the.
Okay, but the height could go.
Yeah, it could go a little bit higher.
A little bit higher based on that 0.3
Yeah,
meter
absolutely.
per floor. Yes. Okay. Good. Thanks for clarifying that.
And I just, I'd like a little discussion on the all concrete component too. When we,
I'll get to that. Yeah. More?
okay, so that was for the zoning and the density bonus. Any further discussions on that? Moving into the PDA, the phase development agreement. Again, this is complex. It's not easy for any of us. It's pretty in-depth stuff that we're dealing with here. Mr. Cunningham, please.
Okay, so in the legal documentation section of your package, five documents which are included in there. There's a phase development agreement and then a covenant for the PTA. There's also a development covenant associated with that, a servicing agreement, and there's also a completely separate third covenant prohibiting tourist accommodation of the resident. I've outlined a kind of a process here which would start with council approving the PDA authorization bylaw. What that does, in effect, is gives the mayor and a corporate officer the right to proceed with executing the PDA and all the other covenants, and then having them placed on title. Mentioned before, those will have to be in place before you consider the rezoning, because if you do it afterwards, the cart has left the barn, right? But if in fact, for any reason, you refuse the rezoning, which you have the perfect right to, then that legal documentation will be taken off title at cost. Proceed now to a discussion of PDA itself. It's a relatively new tool that was added in 2007 to the Local Government Act, and essentially it gives council the right, which it didn't have before, to lock in the zoning provision for a set period of. In return for doing that, they can receive amenity value, which as we've discussed here, council decided that they would like to receive that in terms of cash, but they could have taken it in some other format as well. Got a number of significant provisions of the OASIS PDA, which a large number of them were agreed to by council as negotiating position that staff. So starting off, the maximum term is 10 years. We're actually could be allowed to go beyond that up to 20 years with the consent of inspector municipalities, but our LU bylaw prohibits that. We feel that 10 years is long enough to lock up development of a particular parcel of property in this town. The provisions of the zoning amendment bylaw will be protected during that time. If, in fact, the developer wants to apply for any change whatsoever for those zoning, then they're going to have to go through a formal public application made to council, meetings with the public hearing, and so forth. provisions actually in the legislation which would have allowed them, they think may have wanted to pursue this, but it would have allowed them to identify specific things like that. Minor amendments could solely approved by council discretion. Wouldn't have to go through the public process, and said no, we don't. Will receive up to a maximum of $500,000 cash over development. Set amounts which are payable at phase 1. For the amounts payable for the residential buildings are on their habitable space, which is the normal way of doing it. But for the medical commercial building, we stipulated that they made the whole floor space. Because it's an earlier process, monies collected might have been less for that. Because we're under aggressive rate, starts $1.20 per square foot up. And as we've discussed quite considerably, wanted to see some balance in here or security with respect to council's waiver of the density. So if they don't meet this target of 35% specified medical use by phase 3, then they pay 50. If they don't reach by 4, then they have to pay another $100,000 for 100,000. I don't think that that's going to come about, but only reasonable to make that we have that safeguard.
Just, I'd like to ask this question now while we're in there looking at the stream of payments on the PDA. Do they pay that when do they pay that? Like, if we looked at it's going to be triggered in year 3 when they build Oasis 1, okay, so that would trigger 75,000 square feet at $2.42, $183,000. So if they don't build that, what happens?
They don't build.
Let's say in year 3 they don't build Oasis 1. They decide to not do anything. So then they don't pay that money?
No, they only pay a building permit. And because we've got a progressive rate, of course, the longer that they hold on, the more money they're going to pay for that first building. Ready? So if I have the numbers in front of me, going up 10% a year, so they stay longer another year, then it's another 10%, another 10%, another 10%. Perfectly in their interest possible. So
if we were running these out to the end, let's say they don't do the final 1 or the final 2, or they build 1. So what happens at the end? What sort of scenario if they never got beyond the medical building? There'd be no payments made to the town on that phase development because in effect there was no phase development.
Correct.
So then if they did, we have the four developments, so if they did 2, they would just pay the 1 that actually came into play.
That's correct.
And that's through the development, through the DP.
Building permit.
Building permit, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Council? Councillor Chadsey, please.
I have a question, but it's quite a bit further on. Did you want me to wait till you got there, or?
Yeah, let's.
Okay. There's a no separate sale restriction. It says that the land can't be sold until they've been subdivided, and then a parcel can be sold separately. Yeah.
Right now, the property's in 2 lots, and our lawyer, Bickler, and I agree, did not want to see the potential scenario where sold off, let's say, the eastern part of the lot, which completely screwed up the development. So as one action, 2 present lots have to be consolidated, subdivided into 5 lots. At that point, could sell off lots. provisions here saying that any purchaser has to provide evidence down that informed of all the payments have to be made, and that everything carries with the land. So if a parcel is sold off, then let's say parcel 3, residential developer, then they would be assuming all of the obligation to pay the monies for that.
So the all of the zoning, the PDA, everything goes with the land
That's correct.
Okay.
Nothing can be.
for 10 years.
That's correct.
Councilor Ryan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just following up on that, because these agreements all run with the land, even the termination of the 10 years, would that have an effect on provisions of the agreement?
If they were in the middle of something, then that would have to be let's say they took out the building permit for the last building, just say, sake of argument, 1 month for termination agreement, still has to be filled out exactly as per the provisions in it.
So let's say that they sold one of the lots, one of the let's say the last phase that parcel was sold, and the 10 years expired before any building took place on that. Do any of these provisions apply then to that parcel?
Well, just the one I mentioned, where they actually were in process of doing something. If they haven't taken any action whatsoever on the last parcel within the 10-year period, then they would be open to a subsequent council's discretion own property.
Right. So the development, the what is it, the DC 6 or 8 that we're putting on the land,
Right.
that would expire.
Correct.
Yeah, with the agreement.
Right. Yep. It's locked in for 10 years.
Okay. Good.
Okay, moving on, Council. Thank you. Mr. Cunningham?
Okay. So as per council's request, did ensure that in fact the provision here which allows a future council to there's affordable housing in place of amenity values. That could happen at the time the first, second, third residential building, whatever, and have to obviously the amount of money have to be agreed upon by the town, but we would also have control for how these are sold or rented, what levels. It'll all be covered Section 5 Housing Government Act. So it's a total control whether or not we want to proceed with it, but if we do proceed with it, we've got the total control on how it's done.
Yeah, that was a nice touch.
Yeah. Also responding to a direction by council, we negotiated a potential provision for the developer to dedicate linear park along Peace Pond for public parkland, turn for an offset against parkland available. We estimate at the present moment, according to our current rates, are almost $500,000. So, so some of that or all of that might could be offset for the town gaining a public park along pond. Mentioned in the earlier report, possibility that when the Avalon property ever redevelopments could extend that linear park.
Could we see that reflected with a dollar figure? I know when we did Indigo, and actually we were in effect purchasing parkland because we had DC charges, and we bought that .46 of an acre over there, that had a very, very precise X number of dollars and pennies attached to it. Do we have that here for the?
No, we don't, and obviously proper evaluation have to be of the property at the time. Council lead in that direction. Evaluation includes the actual worth of the land and the improvements made by the developer of developing a park according to a plan buyers.
Okay, okay. So at that time, we would have that dollar figure comparative
Absolutely.
number. Okay, thank you. Council? Oh, Councilor Ryan?
Yeah. At what time would the park DCC charges be applied?
They're applied at the building permit for residential buildings. They're not payable on a medical commercial building.
Okay, thank you. Yeah,
Councilor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just going back for a moment to the 35%. When I first read that, I thought, since that's the key tipping point here of making this a really desirable development, it seemed a bit low to me at the initial stages. But I think if you can demonstrate that we have that is really wrapped up ironclad, I think I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and I went through the developer actually and confirmed my satisfaction area presented to how the 35% would be met certain time. So I'm pretty confident it will be met, but safeguard, because we're giving out money for it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Okay, continuing, Mr. Cunningham?
All righty. And again, responding to a request, a request by council. The PD requires, and I'll quote this section full for everybody, the fullest consideration be given by the developer found through the building design permitting process to adopting cost-effective measures for advancing sustainable site development, water efficiency, energy efficiency, selection, and indoor environmental quality that will make buildings eligible for its. So we will start that process of negotiation with the developer with medical commercial and carry it forward to the residential.
And the developer's on board with that?
Has not complained about that provision in the PTA. I suspect we'd be in for some pretty heavy negotiation, and especially with the cost effectiveness of some components versus others. You don't always get a dollar's return for a dollar's investment with respect to some of the items provided here. So we, I think, have to proceed on the basis of a cost effectiveness analysis. What is it that we want to get in terms of the town that would have the biggest payoff with respect to the developer? Where's the best place to put his money?
And I think that's fair to the both to the community and the developer to set the bar, and I mean some of those things could be exorbitant. Right. So at least we have the ability to negotiate.
That's correct. And we have to be mindful that we don't have the real estate market that, for instance, Vancouver enjoys, where because of the high floor space rents, developers can afford to put all of these kind of things. In fact, of last week, we're going to be required to go in any rezoning in Vancouver. We don't enjoy that kind of market here, so we'll get whatever we.
Okay. Continuing, please. Okay.
The developer intends to use concrete construction throughout, but we have something in A which, in fact, specifies that all buildings have to be concrete construction. And this is a requirement that satisfies Section 11 of our bylaw, which responds to provincial plans to make taller wooden buildings permissible under the building code. In our kind of climate and with limited resources, our fire department, I don't think it's a good idea to have wooden buildings over 4 stories. That actually is a requirement in our LUP bylaw with respect to granting density. They will not grant a density bonus for wooden construction of buildings 4 stories. So there's one building, potential building, which could apply to, and it's a 6-story residential building. So whether they want to or not, they're going to have to build a concrete construction for our requirements.
I think that's a good position. I think that's a position that this council and previous councils both took, even though that they do have that 6th floor allowable with wood frame now. I think we're far more prudent and wiser to be staying with concrete at 4 and up.
Okay, lastly of note, because of the quite considerable problems that the town experienced accommodation in residential buildings, there's an actual covenant preventing the developer from doing that. Bad that went down to the deadline and getting all of this together. There was still the odd word that had to be rectified in that process. I give a commitment to the developer that back up with something with both parties, particularly with respect to the reference to the resident. So we're going to come up with some proper wording to cover concerns, at the same time protect our.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to just discuss that a bit. So, are you saying that the word principal residence is not is still up for change?
Causing some concern on the part of the developer, because you could have the property owned by somebody, let's say, lives in Vancouver, wants to retire here in a couple of years' time. Meantime, rent it out to some other party. And, it's a question of whether then it constitutes principal residence of that. So our lawyers got themselves all tied in a knot about this. So I have to go back and.
Well, I think that the list of things that we've done and you've just gone through, I mean, they're commendable, and I'm very pleased with them. Clearly we have had a serious problem of these tenancies for the summer, and people being, regular tenants being removed from them in order to make summer residence rentals. But I know that principal residence is kind of a tax term, and I can see that that it would be hard, to say residence is for a residence is one thing. What is that? I mean, people own condos here and are here 3 months of the year, and it's a residence. It's used only for that purpose. But even because these are probably going to be strata, I don't see how you can I don't see how you can require that somebody, make this their. You can say they can't rent it, but the only justification for restricting ownership in a strata is on the basis of some case law related to age.
Well, a couple of things there. Strata covenants have to concur with zoning requirements. They can put additional requirements, not do it, in fact, deviate from the zoning requirements. Second point is that one of the big problems that we had through the whole process, the developer in the first place marketed units, potential to accommodate. That would completely prevented by this. Not put it in the disclosure statement. In fact, they hired, promulgated kind of a promise and we on them very strongly. So
Yeah.
it's not perfect, but it does
Yeah.
a lot better than what we have right now.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, I'm delighted to see it. I just realized that it's a tough one to sort of get the right term for and so on. But I commend you and I hope that with the lawyer, I guess we're going to come up with the right word. But that's excellent that we are putting that in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next section is on the servicing equipment. Servicing attached, development covenant. And I've just identified some of the highlights out of developer here. Consultants with input through consulting over some of those highlights, but I have to just note that brief is still not be completed to the satisfaction of the town. Need to make certain changes be made, but we're still in fact our engineer in particular identified certain shortfalls. So we've had quite a process of saying, this is a requirement.
And this would be the servicing, so we're talking sewer and water?
Sewer, water, storm drainage, roads.
Oh, and roads, okay.
And landscaping, sense of that drive.
Everything, okay.
Yeah. So totaling the grand total of their expenses, developer responsible $1,501,000 of work. Some of those are public works, some of them are private civil. Both cases, heavy loading up front. All the public work have to be completed then first. Some of it's private work as well. Those will be secured, public work, by LOC, about time of subdivision. As soon as he subdivides, after identify.
Are we doing roads yet? Are you coming to roads, or can we talk roads?
Yeah, I'll come to.
Okay.
I won't dwell very much on water and storm drain. That's all been done to our standards. There are connections nearby for everything, but there's still substantial costs making a connection into the developments.
And nice to see irrigation twinning is a part of that program. Thank you.
When we turn to roads, though, as I mentioned before, there'll be a new public road which will extend from existing debt through the highway for 3. Civil design brief does obviously opens up the debt drive for additional traffic. Went through 3 or 4 traffic studies that have been completed on the traffic impacts and concluded, and I quote, the addition of Oasis development traffic will not result in substantial delay or reduction of level of service from the. However, there will be additional traffic on the debt, and in view of that, staff successfully negotiated a series of improvements that will have to be existing debt itself. Mitigate the impacts of these traffic flows. $265,000 will cover the upgrading of the road itself. There will curbs, better road depth don't have at the present moment. There'll be a sidewalk along the western side with street lighting and extensive lamp. That's shown on a concept plan which is directly attached package. I just want to note here that Vedette is a public street. And there was always the promise of additional traffic being directed along that street under the present zoning, R7. So the developer could have built out the 237 residential. That traffic, part of it, all of it, could have been directed along Vedette. In fact, at one point in time, there was a possibility that all of it could be directed along Vedette, because it's only fairly recent that highways have agreed to the additional access to highway. I want to also note that, because I know it's been a minor concern, that with respect to Jubilee Drive, there'll be additional traffic put on there, and our engineer has confirmed that drive is satisfactory for accommodating any extra traffic that will be generated by this.
Yes, on that note, I guess I have a bit of maybe a question and maybe a request. Can we have that written, please? Can we have an engineer's report on that? It just says he confirms it. Verbal is, I was looking at it again yesterday. I still have a concern about, with the posts in it and things like that. And truly, everyone talks about the traffic going out on Vedette. The Vedette traffic is not going to go to 92nd. The Vedette traffic is going, why would you go to 92nd? It doesn't make any sense when you can go down Jubilee when you're going to town, the post office, the doctor's offices, and all that. So Jubilee is going to be the play. And rather than a word, I don't need a big engineered report, but I would like to see someone's name on it and a signature saying that it's good to go.
We'll get that. We already have it in a big engineering report that you mentioned, and that's why we didn't attach it here. It's a very lengthy document dealing with the ups and downs of this engineering. Not a suitable thing to attach to a council package, but I'll get something separate from the.
That would be really appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Cunningham. And I guess I have one more on roads. When there's a theme throughout the report, that the developer is providing this road and everything. And of course, from my position, I'm saying, well, why wouldn't he? We wouldn't set back road DC charges for his road through there. We wouldn't trade those off, would we?
No, there's no trade-off whatsoever. The only situation in which you can do a trade-off like that is where an intended public road in our plan, and prior to the year that was scheduled to be built, the developer to open up his particular property to advance that particular schedule. Those particular conditions offset against each can be. That's not operable.
Okay, so the developer will be paying his full share of DCCs, and the road is his responsibility. That's also. Right. Okay. And
we also in the PPA some language there which precludes the developer from ever coming back with respect to a latecomers agreement. Didn't want to be faced with that, so no latecomers.
Okay, Council on Roads, Councilor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Did that.
Yeah. The existing part of Vedette Drive will be impacted by traffic. No matter how you look at it, it's going to increase through there. I noticed that the plan is to do the sidewalks and curbs and that kind of thing. Has there been any interaction with the residents in that community at all? And if not, is there a plan in place to have a discussion with them and what their feelings are? Or do we just leave it open at the public information?
Well, we certainly expect that a significant proportion of the people that will be coming to staff public would be from Vedette. But we're very prepared to address their concerns and point out exactly what the developer is. I also suspect the same group will probably be hearing. There was some talk about the developer himself going around knocking door to door, but they decided not to proceed with that at this time. I think it was quite a
past two meetings that have been held. Is there anything we could derive from that? Was there opinions expressed at that time, negative, positive?
Yeah, there was certainly negative feelings. I think that the people along there have grown accustomed to the idea that they, for the most part, don't live on a road, and it doesn't look like a public street. Probably fuels some of their feelings. I think that nobody will live there. If I lived there, I certainly wouldn't look forward to traffic along there. But they do live on a public street, part of the town network. So there has to be a accommodation. There has to be a meeting of the ways, and hopefully, with the considerable amount of monies that the developers committed to improve it, that we'll find that middle way. But there's possibly going to be some satisfied people out there.
Councillor Chadsey, please.
Thank you. I noticed on the site plan that the parking lot is directly across from Eagle Court. Is there any, was all this done with the possibility in the future that Eagle Court will cross Highway 3 and join into Vedette? Like a signalized intersection or anything like that?
No. Highways, the MOT have never been keen on that idea.
Councillor Cronmiller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just my question is in the shopping center, and I can't think of the name of the road that runs through there. There's a street runs through there as well. That's it. Now, what does Highways say about the use of that road in this process?
They don't want to see Valiant further developed as for taking additional traffic out onto the highway, because they consider that that's not a very suitable place. There's a curve in the road there, and there's also a change in grade, so they're quite opposed to any sort of idea, for instance, of making a stronger connection between that and the highway. Valiant. They're opposed to that.
Is that actually a road, or is it just an agreement between the owner of the shopping center and the owner of the motel?
There's
The road.
Yeah, there's a road.
It's a
yes,
road.
there is.
Okay.
Anything further on roads? Okay, Mr. Ryan.
Yes,
Councillor Ryan.
yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it seems to me that the people who are on this, the proposed sidewalk side, are going to be the most impacted by the traffic, because they're closer to, their dwellings are closer to the road.
Right.
And I guess they're obviously making provision to have curb cuts and everything so they can access their little parking spaces and so on there. Are those from your viewing? I haven't gone over there for a while, but from your viewing of this sketch, I mean, are those plantings and so on possible in terms of the space that's available for developing that?
Yes, they are, and Steve has been very much on top of this to the of identifying specifically the calibers of trees that will be placed on there, what kind of trees, and one late breakthrough we got from the developer that Steve advised me of this morning, because it happened yesterday when I was away on vacation. They will put a irrigation.
Oh, that's good, yeah. Give them a bit of...
On the discussion of things like that, one item which we had added to here, and there's a few changes that's going to have to be made prior to our next meeting report. One of them is that we've got an agreement that landscaping for the linear park will be added as an item servicing agreement. Don't have the cost for it right now, but there's a fairly lengthy list of features specified have to.
Councillor Ryan?
One other small thing, and that is, am I correct that there is some kind of a little town park at the intersection of the southeast intersection of Jubilee and And
No.
going down to the lake, on that corner.
I can maybe explain that. There's a corner
Okay.
at
Where the
the
bat house is.
intersection of Jubilee and
Vedette,
Vedette.
yeah.
And the owners of the Peanut Pond condos requested that the town dedicate that to them and that they would make it into a park. And with no offense to them, I think they rolled a big boulder there, and that's kind of been it. Yeah.
And the bat cage is there, the bat
Yes.
house.
Yes.
Okay.
Just two quick comments. One of them, that I did have a brief discussion with the developer, and he wasn't really ready to do anything with the folks on Vedette until first reading. Why go down the road and get everyone fired up, and unless you have sort of, again, that kickoff process, which is first reading. And I think when that happens, when and if that happens, that will be the triggering moment for quite a few different issues out there in the neighborhood. And I guess the people on the Peanut Pond side there, I was out there looking at it, and I'm trying to establish property lines, and if you look at telephone poles and things like that, yeah, it's going to be fairly close to some of their parkades. It would appear that there's a lot of boulevard land there. That road will actually be very wide. It certainly would be ample for the traffic that's coming out on Vedette. We'll see where Jubilee is. Councillor Rhodes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are we at groundwater yet, or that stormwater?
Yeah, that
Or is that coming
that's
up?
covered under the servicing. Yeah, so there will be dry wells. There will be no runoff that would go directly.
So we're going to construct, or the developer will construct the stormwater, and it'll be a dry well type of thing. How do you prevent that from flowing into the pond?
By just ensuring that the dry wells are of sufficient capacity. Places. Clearly, you wouldn't want to have 50 from ponds. They would be upland, downland from buildings, obviously, catch the runoffs from the parking, not further down. So that area's gone, fighting concern of his, so gone through their plans, trying to go and now satisfied they're satisfactory.
So if the dry wells are located partway down from Highway 3 to the pond, what do you do about storm water beyond the dry wells? Would that not freely flow into the pond?
Yeah, well, if there was a catastrophic event, you're absolutely right, and as per our subdivision bylaw, would be provisions for allowances for land, some sort of unusual storm event that will come. System allow that in all of our subdivisions.
So just to elaborate a little bit, if there's a what-if scenario happens, if there's an oil spill on the other side of the dry wells, it will flow into the pond, is that?
Yeah, that's right.
But that wouldn't be catastrophic, that would be...
No, the catastrophic event would be very, very heavy. By the end.
Yeah, I understand that, but I think the stormwater collection, because it's not always water, it's stuff that's sitting on the surface that goes in there as well, and would it not be wiser to try and locate those further down, or?
No, it's just as long as they are all the hard surface.
Okay.
Tops of it. As long as they're located that.
I guess that's what my question was, yeah.
Yeah,
and they will be, they are?
They will be designed that way.
So they're basically on the fringe of the parkland dedication.
Yeah.
Is that, at
Well,
the end of the parking lots and,
Well, yeah, a little bit further in from
Yeah.
that. And remember that the park area itself will offer catastrophic. I mean, appropriate planted, and especially stuff around the perimeter on itself. Siltation.
okay. So as we're sort of wrapping up servicing, I think we're going to have a 10-minute break here. There's, I know there'll be some more dialogue. I don't want to run through this. It's heavy going. 10:45, reconvene. 10-minute break. 8-minute break. Thank you. Yeah.
Exactly. We have included here a development permit for the medical commercial building. It's more normal practice to wait till the actual final reading of the rezoning, but we had all the information available, so we put the development permit together right at the outset for the medical commercial building, so that council and public have the fullest information of the proposed development in an early stage. As I mentioned before, there will be subsequent DPs prior to the construction of each of the residential buildings. The medical commercial building will be governed by our commercial development permit area guidelines, the residential buildings by our residential guidelines. A bit of a difference there. So with respect to the DP for the medical commercial building, I'll hand that over to Steve.
Hi again. The development permit, as Elaine said, has just been attached to give you, so you can see it as early as possible in the process. Under the terms and conditions of the permit, starting on page 2, there's a typical list of bullets describing the parking, the elevations, the colors, provision about how rooftop mechanical equipment is to be screened from view, the terms and conditions regarding water metering, etc. And on the following page, and it's carried over from the phase development agreement, there's a building design provision that the fullest consideration shall be given through the building design to providing green technologies. There's a provision that the land use signage is removed after the permit is approved. And then it's followed by a long list of terms and conditions that are prior to the issuance of a building permit, if the development permit is approved. And they start off with one that regards subdivision, and they have two options. The first option would require them to consolidate the subject properties, the two subject properties, into one, and then subdivide all the land west of Vedette Drive so that the medical commercial building would be on its own title and it's on its own property, and dedicate the extension of Vedette Drive through the property to the town as road dedication. Or they have the second option would be to proceed with the 5-lot subdivision as shown on the phasing plan, which does all the same except creates 5 lots and also dedicates the road as road dedication to the town. And concurrently with that, either one of those subdivision options, they would need to provide the town with a registered copy of a Section 219 covenant for off-site parking, which covers off the 26 parking stalls that are shown on the site plan that are located on the east side of Vedette Drive, just under Oasis 2, I think, or Oasis 1, the first residential building. The covenant would need to be in favor of both the town and the Ministry of Transportation, and registered in priority over the financial charges of the development. The next bullet is in regards, it's a typical one in most of the development permits that we issue, that they need to provide the town with a geotechnical report, providing the soil bearing capacity and the footings for the footings and foundations of the buildings, as the B1 for each of the DPs. That's the buildings go through their phases. Next page, there's a bullet on stormwater management, and this is also typical that we, prior to the issuance of a building permit, we'll take that stormwater management plan and review it completely with true engineering to make sure that it's consistent with town standards in our subdivision servicing bylaw, and that plan will show all of the impervious areas and how stormwater have all the stormwater calculations for a 10-year rainfall event, design criteria for all the on-site disposal systems. And we had all of the calculations already in the civil design brief that's attached at the back of this this package, but because they need to be finalized, and there's about probably a quarter-inch of paper, we took them out for now because we figured it's going to be dealt with in a lot more detail down the road. But we reached a level of confidence that the stormwater management can be satisfied to meet our subdivision servicing bylaw. The next bullet is in regards to landscaping, and this is also typically the way that we do it on most of our development permits, that prior to the issuance of a building permit, that we'll receive the final version of the professionally prepared landscape plan, prepared to the satisfaction of the town. It'll be reviewed. Then they will provide the town with landscape securities that are based on 125% of a landscape cost estimate to be approved by the town. And that's followed by the submission of a landscape inspection fee that's calculated as 2% of the approved landscaping cost estimate. That's about it in summary of the DP.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Shannon. I just have a question on that landscaping. Is there a time frame on that at the end? Like when we get in, I know we don't do occupancy permits yet, but I believe we're moving towards occupancy permit versus final inspection. But is there a time frame for those landscaping commitments to be triggered?
It's based on our landscape policy. They provide us with the landscape security based on the 125% of the landscape cost estimate approved by us. And then once we've got the landscape securities, once all of the plants are planted, and we've inspected that all the plants have been planted, we'll release up to 75, or we'll release 75% of the landscape securities. We hold the balance, the remainder of those securities, for a 1-year maintenance period. But once we do the first release, we set up in the spreadsheet a release date and a trigger for the follow-up inspection. We go back out a year later, and we figure in this climate that after 1 year, if the plants have done well and they're still thriving, that they probably have a good chance of survival. And then if everything is good, then we release the balance.
I wonder in our policy if we wouldn't have at some point an actual period of time where maybe there's a developer that isn't moving ahead with his landscaping and just going to sit there. Some of them move slow when they get into those final processes. So I'm just wondering if we've come across that, or whether we would consider that as. And I realize it's a bit of a side issue, but the motivation doesn't appear to be there at all times.
We have one of those right now, and that you're probably aware of. That the clock's really ticking, and not very much of the landscaping has been done, but. With the project that I'm speaking of, there's also some road issues that need to be completed, and a retaining wall for holding up one of the neighboring streets. The developer has promised to complete the landscaping. If by chance he doesn't complete the landscaping, we have a significant amount of landscape security still in place. We haven't released any, and we're confident that if need be, we could go out and do the landscaping ourselves with that LOC. And the developer's been advised already that if need be, we will do that.
Your crystal ball works very well, Mr. Shannon. Great reply. Thank you. Council? Councilor Ryan?
Yes, thank you. On number 3 of the development permit, the subdivision, you've got 2 options. Earlier, it sounded like the second option was really the preferred one, and the one that's that the agreement is sort of referencing. Is there any special reason for putting in the 2 options there?
It just gives them an option that they don't have a specified time that they have to do the subdivision into the 5 lots, or so they could be phasing lines or subdivision lines as the development proceeds. So there's no set time that the subdivision has to take place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Alan. But so to cover it off in the DP of just setting up, they have to do one or the other. We would hate to see that, because there's 2 parent parcels, and the lands to the west of Vedette Drive, there's a portion of both of them on there. So as with any development, when there's a comprehensive development zone being made or a rezoning of a group of properties like we did with Watermark, we always have a requirement where the developers consolidate all of the parent parcels. So basically, we're making sure that that step takes place, and that we get the road dedication in place, and that we get the medical building on its own title for phase 1. We're quite confident that the developer is going to proceed with the 5-lot subdivision. Having said that,
Okay. Over to you, Mr. Cunningham. I guess we've covered off that subdivision application, so we're just into wrap-up stage here, options and...
Right. Staff supports the proposed Oasis development for a number of reasons. Explained before, the accommodation of the medical commercial building and the 237 residences on the Oasis property will advance our smart growth objectives in our OCP with respect to promoting mixed land uses, housing diversity, a compact community, and effective growth management. And they also support, as I mentioned before, the goals of the regional growth strategy. The proposed development accords with all our site planning and servicing standards, as well as the requirements of the Ministry of Transport, who have been very much involved, by the way, in this project. The town will receive an amenity value of up to $500,000. And something which I really want to emphasize is that development will be financially self-sustaining and will not impose tax burdens on existing residents. You probably read through the newspapers nowadays, and you'll find a lot of references to municipalities across BC who seem to be very development hungry and are providing a lot of financial incentives to developers to come into their communities and build. There will be no such provisions in this particular case. There will be no cost sharing for services, no tax holiday, no reduced to deferred DCs, and no waiving of permit fees. I say that's in contrast with some other communities.
That's a big statement.
Yeah. The creation of a modern state-of-the-art medical facility that accommodates multiple facets of healthcare, I think, will be a very valuable draw for getting new health provisioners coming into our community, and that's long been an objective or priority of the town. Besides the medical facility providing additional healthcare, improved healthcare for current residents, could be an economic driver for retaining more year-round residents and attracting new residents. Oasis development will also expand employment opportunities, promote spin-off businesses, and enlarge our tax base. Lastly, Oasis will inject a timely development after the recent markets down. So for all of those reasons, staff recommend development.
And just before I turn this over to council, those were some good observations there. And it's a tough economic time out there. And if we can get some trades going, some construction going, I think it really bodes well for the town of Vesuvius. having said that, it's funny, we sit here and we haven't really touched on height. So we're talking 5, 6, 8, and 10 floor buildings. So where does that really come in as we play this out? Because I'm sure there's going to be people that are going to have reservations about the height that's going in there. Personally, I don't see anything that's an area that's any more suited for some higher than 4-floor buildings than right there. It's already down about 3 or 4 floors from the highway. But when does height come into play in the development, in the building permit or the development permit, or?
Well, it's regulated.
It's in the zoning, right in the zoning.
Regulated under the zoning, and it's regulated under some of the legal documentation, but it would be applied at the time of development permits and building permits.
So when we go into this comprehensive development zone, the CD zone that we're giving first reading to today, that is the start of the giving the okay for the heights for those buildings, because it's in that comprehensive development.
That is correct.
Okay. Just want to make that point clear to council, the media, and the citizens that are here, that this is what this is looking like. So we'll have some questions and input and some dialogue from council. Councillor Cronmiller, first.
Really? Touching me there, sister. Well, it's interesting. It's amazing to see this come to fruition after I don't know how many years we've talked about it and looked at it. I'm pretty impressed. I talked to one individual from town the other day, that the business across the street, and he says it's high time that something happened in that lot, and I'm really looking forward to seeing something go on there, and it's been an eyesore for a long time. But having said that, I'm curious as to what the public input will be to you. Last comments about 10-story buildings, and but again, when we look at our lack of dirt, as our previous mayor used to talk about, what better way to deal with that than to build some buildings, residential buildings, that will allow people to come and live here and let us expand our growth in our community. And also, it's close to downtown. It works for that. A professional building that will attract medical people, and I think there's some work to do in that area. Talk to local doctors about it. These are all exciting things, and so I'm looking forward to seeing this move ahead and hear what the public has to say about it. I think the public's been kind of waiting for this. And when we talk about all these other things that we've been involved in, let's hear what they have to say.
Yeah, it's
I
going
look
to.
forward to that.
Thanks, Councillor Cronmiller. It's going to be an interesting process when we get into the information meetings and the public hearing and that, and see what the citizens think about this. Councillor Ryan, questions, statements?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think that there are a lot of good things about what our phase development agreement includes. And we do have a chance to build more housing that is compact, that is a little denser in the downtown, near a lot of services. We're putting a lot of hope on that medical professional building, and as a result of that, I not only wish that that our hope will be realized, but I also, I don't want to refer to this too many times, but I think we do have to make sure that we have that locked in, so that it does continue to be what it is meant to be, which is primarily a medical center. The height will be an issue. And it's always hard. I mean, the picture on the front of our binders doesn't really do the neighborhood justice, because they always highlight their own development, and I always, whenever we have a development of this nature, I always wish that we had a little model that had you know, the heights and so on of the surrounding area, so that we could see in the terrain to see just how it was going to impact. But as you said, Mr. Mayor, I believe that that area, you know, certainly to the south of it, it's you know, it's commercial and it's not going to really bother anybody there. Phase 4 probably is going to have the most impact because it'll be near the end of that townhouse development. But and I think that you know, the things that were summarized by staff are very important, and the covenants, we're setting some precedents, I think, by some of our covenants there, and so and the LEED's equivalent. If we can even achieve some of that, I think that will be a start, and those things are going to become easier and easier as hopefully they become less expensive to build, and as they become more cost effective in terms of the escalation of our costs of electricity and other things. So I'm glad we had this thorough discussion, and I look forward to us hearing from the public.
Great. Thanks, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Rhodes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to be consistent in my evaluations of protocol here, and I would be prepared to speak to this, but I would like to make a motion first, if that's acceptable at this time. Okay. And I'd like to comment about it afterwards. So I'd so move that we give first reading to the official community plan amendment bylaw 1230.08, zoning amendment bylaw 1085.
I think they should be separate. Doesn't matter? Okay, continue.
Thirdly, the phase development agreement authorization bylaw number 1272. With regard to points 2 and 3 in the recommendations, I would like to alter those dates. First one being August 25th, 2010, and point number 3 to September 7th, 2010, and at the locations outlined in the recommendation.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Ryan. Speaking to the motion, Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This project started off quite a number of years ago, as previously indicated, and as it was brought to council, this is my first shot at a major development. It's been a great process. I understand that oftentimes these things start off as a dream, and I think I'm kind of buying into the dream right now. I kind of like the whole project. I'm particularly in favor of how this marries up with our regional growth strategy that we've, the agreement that we've entered into. It's an extension of that. It's centrally located, and it has a lot of positive points. In addition to the many things that are outlined in the information that we reviewed today, there's a lot of other benefit in our community. Economically, it has a tremendous impact, tremendous positive impact in our community. It obviously will employ individuals in good quality jobs in our community. And, you know, as those dominoes fall down over the next period of time, and even if it's extended out for the full 10 years, you know, there are going to be workers in our community that are renting places, shopping at our stores, eating in our restaurants. And that's always a big, big thing for me. So I'm speaking in favor of the motion, and those are just a small amount of the reasons why I'm in favor of it at this point.
Thank you. Councillor Chadsey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would absolutely support first reading because I'm very interested in attending a public information meeting and hopefully onto a public hearing. This is a tremendous development, and first and foremost, I'd like to commend staff for the work that they've put into it and for such a concise report. This report contains 132 pages of material that most of council has read over the long weekend, just to make ourselves somewhat familiar. I'm always interested in the best use for the development of any property, and while I certainly have my own ideas, and I am looking so forward to hearing what the public has to say. And I hope that when the public attends the information meeting, that they will recognize that the land now or in the future will be developed. And so based on that they look at the proposed development and decide for themselves if this is the best use of the land, and we'll head on from there. I do just have one question. Does staff have any idea with respect to the height, how many stories are visible from Highway 3?
Not to my recollection, but I believe there were some drawings done for that, and we certainly could get that in.
Okay, that might be just something to be available at the public information. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Chadsey. And I guess there's I've got one issue, and again it was sort of piggybacking on Councillor Ryan, and that would be the surety side of this. I really want to make sure that all those sort of guarantees go from soft to hard with sureties or bonds or whatever vehicle we use for that. I think it's important that we have that engineering report. I'd like to see, and I guess to the public, I'd like to say this is not a done deal. You know, this is, again, first reading is the start of the process where it's kicked off. This is the triggering moment. We're more than involved with hearing from the community and what they think. This is a big issue, as you've sat through and understood along with us. Very important, very complex, very well presented. So if we can take this information forward to the public, see and get their feedback on it, I think you're seeing council here quite intrigued by the process and where this could and will go. So I'm happy to see it at this point, but I really would be disappointed if somebody said, well, it's a done deal, because it's a long way from a done deal, and we're really trying to make that clear to everybody. Further input from Councillor Ryan Cronmiller, because you were at the tail end of the motion. Councillor Ryan, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I seconded this because it is important that we move it forward and that we hear from the public. As I said, we have put we're resting a lot of hope on not only this development but particularly on the Medical Professionals Center. And I know that I was dismayed a few months ago when we heard from some of our doctors who were not very enthusiastic about it, and then that was concerning me, and it still concerns me. So I hope that the public will take advantage of not only this being on our website, so they can access it, but I also trust that we will have some hard copies of this material available that the public can view and in advance, and then have questions of staff, so that they will be knowledgeable about what is being proposed. Staff have done, I think, a tremendous job on this, and I feel at this point that with council's guidance, the staff have given it the best shot, and so there's still a few little details that need to be ironed out, but basically, we have, with council's guidance and they come to us for direction on a number of things, and I think we have pushed pretty much as far as we can. I look forward to the next stage, to our public hearings and to our public information meetings, and I just hope that the public will really take this seriously, and that we'll have an excellent turnout, and that we will choose a venue for the public hearing and the public information center meeting that will accommodate what I think will be large numbers of people turning out.
Thank you, Councillor Ryan. Councillor Cronmiller?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple little things that came to mind, and when we talk about dreaming and seeing things happen with medical professional building, I was just thinking, I have to make a trip to Penticton tomorrow morning because my dentist is in Penticton tomorrow. And my neighbor was in Summerland yesterday having cataract surgery because couldn't get it here. This building should offer those opportunities, and I would see a dream that those things will be here for us in the future, and I think that's really exciting. And so I look forward to maybe seeing that happen and move to fruition. And so it's yeah, it is exciting to see this and the opportunities that will be here with this development. And the second thing that came to mind as we were talking here is that I really have to commend staff for the work they put into this. When I look at the book, the time that must have been spent to put this together for us, and the hours that they put in, I really like to thank them for their work, and I really do appreciate the work that you've done on this, and I'm sure that for the public and for us, that has provided us ample information that we can think about where we can go from here, and so thank you for your work.
Great, yeah, and I guess best of all, we can understand it. So hearing no further input from council, we're looking at giving first readings to the OCP Amendment Bylaw 1230.08, to the Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1085.77, to the PDA Agreement Authorization Bylaw number 1272, and direct staff to convene public information meeting on August the 25th and schedule a public hearing for September the 7th at the designated places. All in favor? Opposed? First reading is granted. Having no other business, motion to adjourn. Councillor Chadsey, Councillor Ryan, all in favor. Good afternoon, folks. Oh, it's still morning. And thanks for coming out. It was great to have some members of the public here to watch us go through something that complicated. There was a lot of depth there, so it was really good to have you out here. And thanks to the press. We know that'll be duly reported.